Welcome to Modern Yoga Talks, and this is Irene Papas, and thank you for being here. And for those who doesn't know you yet, introduce yourself, Irene.
For sure. So I'm Irene. I'm also known as Fit Queen Irene on Instagram, and I started teaching yoga around 12 years ago. And at first, I was a quest for the perfect body, really. That's what led me to yoga. I was working out, wanted like the perfect body, and eventually realized that the perfect body did not bring happiness. So then I fell into a yoga class and it was Carson Clay Calhoun's class. I'm sure some of you know him. And it was a rocket yoga class that had handstands and arm balances and all of these things that were extremely challenging. And so I kind of took that obsession that I had with working out and then I transferred that obsession into my yoga practice. And I kind of thought that, being able to do a handstand and being able to do these advanced skills would bring me happiness. And so that took me on a trajectory of, becoming a yoga teacher, deep diving into my yoga practice, going into more contortion style, handstand specific training and that kind of stuff. Also experienced a lot of injuries along the way. And I could go on forever about my story, but I'll keep it relatively short. So fast forward, I had a donation-based yoga studio in Boulder with my best friend Sam. And we did that for a few years, closed that in the pandemic. And now I am in Michigan, where I host retreats in my own home and focus more on the handstand and contortion side of things rather than yoga. Of course, I try to keep an aspect of mindfulness in everything that I do or teach, but I don't teach yoga as much anymore.
That's awesome. So just kind of like a background how I found out about Irene. It was actually a friend of mine, Michelle, that really like guided me to like who to follow or who to like watch or things like that. And that's how I found out about you. And I was taking my second 200-hour training, and that's when I was able to really work with you. And then I took Irene's contortion workshop and your handstand that you killed me, but I loved it as well. And there's so much that you give that really like align with me. And one of the greatest things that you said that resonated with me so deeply was when we were doing your handstand workshop. And you said that it took you a long time to get your handstand. And because of that, it made you a better teacher. And that resonated deeply with me because that time in my life, I was obsessed with handstands as well. Hence, I found you. And I was like, man, it's like taking forever for me to get this. And I feel like, oh, what is wrong with me? Like, I might not that in tune with my body. I can't figure this out. And when you said that, I was like, that small validation that we look from other people that said like, oh, okay, it's okay where I'm at. So you said that you were practicing more like the gym type and getting the perfect body. So what was the process for you, the transition there from like doing that kind of, I know that's a very different discipline because the focus is different to like changing it, transitioning it to yoga.
I think I was always seeking something else. And it was not like, fitness and moving your body is really awesome. But I think that there's reasons why I gravitated toward yoga specifically rather than like Pilates or like spin, because I did all of these things and I enjoy all of those types of movements. But at the time, I was really looking for, I don't know if you want to call it like a sense of purpose, but like I was lost. And I think that deep diving into yoga, not just the asana, but the mindset parts and reading through the Yoga Sutras and just doing all of this kind of like mental work and having a process to follow in some ways, I think was really important to me at that time in my life. And so I think that that's why yoga specifically drew me in because it wasn't just physical. And granted, I think you can say that about a lot of different disciplines like martial arts or even like running. Like it's everything can be meditative if you let it be. But I think that doing the deeper self work and not just like doing the thing, because it's like, yeah, that's great if you like go for a run and it makes you feel better. But like, are you also like thinking about like how your patterns are affecting you in like the way you treat people and like, things like that. So I think that's why yoga drew me in at the time.
So right now, because of having that transition, so to you, what is the role of mindfulness now? When you redefine like what progress looked like, as you said before, like it was more like physical aspect or just getting that perfect body. And from what you said, it transitioned so much deeper than just the
Totally.
superficial body. So like what is the role of like mindfulness now, if you
So
can
I
describe
think
that?
it's interesting because my pendulum has swung in, kind of swung back in a certain way because what I realized is that a lot of people were coming to my yoga classes because they wanted to learn handstands and deep back bends. And that's not exactly what I want to be teaching in a yoga asana class because I think it should be more about connecting to your body in that moment and breath and movement and being present and not thinking about like a skill or a goal. Like you came there because you want to do your handstands or something. Like that's fine if it gets you in the door. You know what I mean? Like obviously everyone has different reasons to get in the door, but eventually you might reach a point where it's like, and that's why I transitioned because it's like if people were coming to my classes to learn these specific skills, it's like I want to be teaching a handstand workshop or a handstand class where I'm not pressured to like teach the poses within a flow. Because personally speaking, I mean, I have a lot of like my wrist issue is a big reason why I don't do like vinyasa classes very frequently anymore. But even when I was at my peak and doing a lot of vinyasa classes and able to do handstands and handstand vinyasa transitions and all of those things, it was very exhausting to do a yoga sequence and then pop up into a handstand mid sequence and do a transition. And like, it's exhausting. And I feel like that's when you get like injured and stuff too. And it's cool if like you have the ability in your practice to like add those things in. And that's really awesome. But like, really your practice should just be an expression of like whatever your body is capable of. It doesn't have to be a handstand. It could be like a low lunge. You know what I mean? Or just like a deep breath. So, and I think that the yoga community isn't there. Like that's not where the yoga community is to me. And also, I mean, I was trying to tell myself I wasn't going to be too controversial before this, but I really don't care. Because I
No,
feel
no,
like,
just say it all.
yeah, I feel like if you look at a lot of the people that are in the industry that are like kind of on the same wavelength or like similar to me, where they have like a lot of followers and they like still teach yoga specifically, like I have the utmost respect for people like Carling who like teach a blend of like yoga and mobility, smart sequencing, like all this stuff. Love her. She's fucking awesome. But then there are other people, I'm not going to name names, but people that are very entrenched in like the yogic tradition still kind of but if you like look deep down at their actions, like, and I try to be a good person. I really do. I try. I know I'm not the best person, but sometimes when I look at these actions of other yoga teachers and like they're trying to hold themselves as like a yoga teacher and they're doing certain things, whether it's like dating or sleeping with their students or like bouncing around from person to person or whatever it is. And I know we all have our issues. I'm really not trying to be super judgmental here, but I'm just saying that I didn't want to be so involved in that community anymore because it felt fake. And like the spirituality felt like it was an excuse to be really egotistical and like selfish and like fuel your own needs in certain ways. So that's why I was like, okay, mindfulness, because of course, mindfulness is important for all of us. And like being in the present moment, I think is like the ultimate skill. And so I try to bring those aspects into like weight training and flexibility training because, even in a world that someone practices yoga asana in a way that like feels authentic to them or whatever, like you still need strength training. You still need
Absolutely.
resistance training for
Absolutely.
most of us. And so I think if you can find a way to be like mindful and kind of take that focus of like what you've learned in your yoga practice to like be focused and then like apply that to strength training, then you're building up your muscles to like protect your joints and then you're still like able to like stretch and move and do the other things that feel good.
So
Now
what you're what go ahead, guys. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you didn't ask me this but there's one other thing I want to say for me specifically that like kind of led me out of like the yoga sphere in some ways is that like I'm extremely hypermobile. Like my joints are very flexible, not even my muscles, so to speak, but like my joints. And so doing a lot of yoga and like passive or like somewhat passive stretching does not help my body feel better. Like I do not feel good if I just practice yoga. And it took me a decade of practicing to realize that, because I was younger when I first started. I could put up with more because you're more resilient when you're younger. And after you've been
How
doing
old were
stuff
you, if you
for
don't
over a
mind?
decade. So I think I started when I was like 21, started practicing. And like I said, I'd come from like the fitness background. So I had like a moderate level of like ability to start. So then like my practice like skyrocketed really fast because I was super hypermobile. I could do all these things, but it wasn't really good for me. And people told me that, but I didn't really realize it at the time. And so now it's kind of hard because like if I go take a yoga class, my body doesn't necessarily feel better after, because I think that even with sequencing and things, it's like the focus is so much on like be creative, teach cool sequences that like, whatever. It's not necessarily about like actually balancing your body and like doing the movements that people need to do to like cross train the rest of their lives. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So what I think what I got from your explanation, not just like your mindfulness doesn't just like exclusive to your movement, the physical movement. It also like bled through life and how you uh be part or interact with the yoga community. Because I totally agree with that, because I wasn't from the fitness background and I wasn't really moving a lot when I was a kid. I danced a little bit when I was in grade school, but I never really like into like the movement. Coming from like I'm from the Philippines, so Asian culture, there's a lot of like toxicity there. So, anyways, that's a cultural difference. But I like what you said about you approaching yoga from a place of this is a workout. There's really no positive to that. If you approach yoga like this, I want to do this to let just lose weight and just to like be this every day. It like really hurts a lot of people. And being hypermobile, like I teach yin classes as well. But I don't teach the traditional yin class. So I say in the beginning of my class, I don't teach a yin class, but if you're into the traditional thing, if you want to stay in a toe squat for like 20 minutes, that's on you. Just don't disturb the others. But if you're hypermobile, you have that flexibility. I want you to lean towards the active strength. All right. And build that strength. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourself. And then that gets blamed to yoga. Like yoga doesn't do that. Your ego did that. So like, and maybe ignorance. So now that you have the knowledge, you approach it how you want, right? I think there has to
Exactly.
be that mindfulness, not just the practice, the physical work that we do, the way we think, the way we interact, and especially I say this every time in the beginning of my class, ego, that mindfulness with ego. There's nothing wrong with ego. We all have that, right? It shows up in the most subtle way. But to tap into that and get to know that, then you'd be able to approach things with more awareness, right? So for you, with yoga and mobility work, how do you think that support longevity, injury? You mentioned about your injury and the sustainability of movement practice. I hope you're enjoying this episode. And as we all know, yoga is more than just poses, right? It is truly about connection. And this your yoga teacher struggling to keep students engaged and build a loyal community. I've got something for you. You can grab my free guide, 3 tips to pack your classes and learn how to create a welcoming space, guide flows with confidence, and leave a lasting impact that keeps students coming back. You can get it now at 3stepyoga.julesadulo.com and start teaching with more connection and ease. Now back to the episode, because I know you do a lot of different modalities.
Well, I think that it really depends on each person what is going to be sustainable for them long term. And that changes, I think, decade to decade throughout our lives, and maybe even more frequently than that. And for me, because I am so hypermobile, it's like 70% of my practice needs to be strength and stability based, give or take. And then 30% around there is like flexibility stuff. And maybe sometimes less or sometimes a little bit more, but like erring on the side of way more strength work than flexibility work because I don't need it and it doesn't feel good. Like just stretching is not useful for me. And granted, like engaged stretching and stuff, great, awesome. Like as long as I'm stabilizing and stuff, but it doesn't feel good to me to stretch my muscles unless they're sore. My muscles are sore and not like so sore I can't walk, but like sore in the sense that if I start to do a forward fold, I can be aware of my hamstrings because like they've worked recently, you know? And because that's something I lacked when I first started practicing yoga. Like I could do the whole Ashtanga standing series more or less without feeling my legs because triangle pose was not a stretch for me. It was easy for me to reach the ground. So, or downward facing dog and never engaged my legs in down dog because it wasn't a stretch. And so now that I'm stronger, I feel stretches in so many places that I never felt a stretch before when I first started. And I think that that's really beneficial. Now, on the flip side, I think there are a lot of people that benefit from like moving with their breath and stretching and like taking a vinyasa class a couple times a week because like maybe they're stiff. They can't get out of their head unless someone is talking them through everything. Like there's a lot of reasons why taking yoga classes could be good for somebody. The community, they really enjoy the teacher, the music, whatever. There's so many reasons. So, and I think that like those are valid because like what, like life is kind of shitty sometimes. So like you have to take your sources of joy where you find them. And so like I will never bash anyone for having like even like wanting to lose weight and starting to like go take yoga. Like cool. If that gets you in the door, awesome. But like you said, at first, like when you know better, you do better. So it's like at first, maybe you're motivated by something and then you realize that like the motivation changes. Or like if you really want to like lose weight, you realize that like maybe you need to pay attention to like more of like what you eat and like getting your steps up throughout the day. Like, I don't know. But I just think that the process, like wherever people start, like maybe that's not the end point,
It
but
never
back to what we're
is,
saying.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It shouldn't be, hopefully. But with the strength and like mobility work, I think that finding a blend is what's like good. That's like what works, for me at least. Finding, even for me, like in the wintertime, I cross country ski more. And in the summer and when it's nice out, like I like to run outside. So I can't always do everything. That's something else I've realized because we only have so many hours in the day. And even for me, I do this for a living and I still don't have time to do all of it. So, what does that mean about your average person that works a 9 to 5? Like, they're going to need to
Sure.
prioritize or just realize that, like, if they enjoy doing like 6 different hobbies, but not like excelling at any of one of them because like they don't spend that much time doing one of them to like get really good at it, that's fine. Whatever brings you joy. But just like, be aware of where you're spending your energy and, if it's helping your body feel better or worse and mentally too.
How do you feel about this? Like, source of joy is it's very complex, right? A lot of people translate it as joy, but it really is a distraction, or you're trying to avoid something and you're feeling that void. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's where, again, like circling back to like mindfulness, I think understanding your core reason why you're doing one thing and then the other, like, would bring you a more sustainable and more grounded approach to whatever this discipline you choose. And I seen you with everything that you do, with really fascinating to me because I'm so late in this yoga game. When I kind of like really diving in and like making a commitment. Because for me, I knew that I have major commitment issues. I dated one guy before for like 2 years. I think I have like a to go bag in the closet for that.
I mean, at least at least you're aware.
I'm ready to like, I'm gone. So I knew I had that commitment issue. So when I tapped into the yoga practice, that's when like, you know what? I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like kind of like talking to myself in that regard, like I'll prove you wrong. I can commit. So when I did that, I lost my train of thought. So that's my ADHD. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm totally like that too.
Yeah. So anyways, like for you and all the disciplines that you do, so do you think like however your yoga practice look like now, do you think it still complement the other things that you do?
Well, so my yoga practice now is like very minimal. And I don't mean that in the sense I don't practice yoga, but I mean that like it means that I'm like sitting on the floor and like stretching my hips a little bit and like doing some like twists and like some little movements to like feel better so I can like sit up and meditate. Because I had this realization a couple months ago because I had stopped meditating because my life was so chaotic. Isn't it funny how that happens? Your life gets crazy and then you stop
I'm that.
meditating and then you're like, oh, and I also feel worse. So, anyways, I started meditating again. And I had this moment of realization of like, if now I lost my train of thought. Okay. No, I'll get it. I'll find it. So meditating. Oh, and realizing that literally the whole purpose of practicing yoga is to feel better when you're meditating because I sat up to meditate and I was like, oh, wait, like I can't sit up. You know what I mean? And then I was like, I need to do some yoga asana, whatever you want to call it. And I had to like do some little movements and like stretch my hips, like move my spine a bit, do some cat cows. And then I could sit and meditate. And that kind of was like my little routine there for a second. And like, I think that, I don't think yoga asana needs to look any certain way because it really, to me, is kind of like taking care of your body. And like sometimes it could be like little prehab or rehab exercises that like but you're being mindful, right? You're like using your breath and your movement. And I think that also for me, because I mean, I practiced some days I would take 2 or 3 yoga classes a day for years. And I got to a point now where like I don't feel like I need to take or like do an hour-long vinyasa practice or even like a 15-minute vinyasa. Like I don't vinyasa. And like I like foam roll a lot and do stuff like that. But I just feel like my self-care practices look very different than they used to because also, we only have so much energy for physical hobbies and activities. So it's like, okay, I'm already weightlifting, running occasionally, stretching, flexibility work, doing all these different things, housework, the usual. And then it's like, should I then practice yoga on top of that? Or would it be smarter to do something else? And I know I already said I'm foam rolling and doing like the basic care of like, taking care of my body. So it's like, maybe I should do art. Maybe I should do something else with that time rather than like doing another physical hobby because I don't need another physical hobby. Like I need to like not
It's actually the stillness that you need. And I
totally.
think it's fair to say that in the mainstream modern yoga world, yoga has this image of just that physical movement. And I love Instagram because I've been on Instagram since it started. But the negative side of Instagram is people obsess over what something looks like, right? Or I hold the teachers and practitioners accountable because, and now the practitioners, someone who wants to do yoga sees it like, oh, this is what yoga looks like. And that's about it.
Like, okay, wait. So can we just rewind for 1 second? So one of the reasons why I think it's kind of funny is like everyone's like, oh, we need to go back to like traditional yoga. But even if you flash back like 100 years, like yoga was used as a performance in like palaces with like young boys that would like perform scorpion handstands and like all these crazy things in order to like get people in to practice yoga, right? So it's like, is that from what we're experiencing now with like social media, even though I think it has a different, I don't know, but that's also why I'm like, I don't
So,
know.
so
Maybe,
don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that, so here's the two things that I have experienced with, the positive and negative of Instagram. So when I started teaching like more ability based, so the people see that, like the regular people, right? Like see that like on Instagram. And then there's this like a comment of like, wait, I saw this on your Instagram. Why are we doing Instagram shit? Like, why not? Just because it's up there
well, it's
on
a
the social
great
media,
learning tool.
absolutely. It doesn't mean you can't do it, right? I think that's where the holding the accountability is for me, is that when you're standing in front of the students, you have the authority or a chance, let's just say a chance to redirect that. or to plant seeds or to reframe it in a way that just because that you see someone like if I see you on Instagram, you're fucking amazing, right? But I also know understand bodies. So I know that you possess a great skill, not just that you are like already you said that you are very flexible in the joint, but you actually studied this and done this for years. So that's where I'm saying like I hold the teachers accountable. You have to explain it to your students. Like you have to educate and actually teach and not just tell someone to like go on warrior two. So like you have to tell people that if your body is not ready for that and all these things and to work your way, if that is your goal, it doesn't matter what the goal is. If your goal is to do a back bend, like work your way to it and not just jump and just do this. You know what I mean? That's what I meant by that because I love social media. My approach in social media is no different than the real life, like the in-person thing. There's a good and bad. It's really just how you look at it and apply it in your life. Go ahead. You got something to say. I want to hear.
Right.
I like this conversation.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, I mean, obviously, I love social media. It's granted me so many opportunities. I also hate social media almost equally
Yeah.
because I think it is just really hard to remind yourself that a lot of it's not real. Like, even if it's real, it's curated. So it's like not as real as like we feel like it is. And yeah, and there's just a lot of parts of it that I struggle with. But what I was going to say, to what you were talking about is like, I get really inspired by different drills and stuff on social media. But then I think it's kind of funny because like, there's like, for example, there's a specific body line drill that's floating around on Instagram right now. It's an amazing body line drill, but there's a specific way that the original teachers taught it where like the front blocks are on their medium setting and then the bottom block is on a low setting. And I think that that's done very much on purpose to get the alignment of the drill correct. And then I see all these other people teaching it and they're teaching it on like the low setting with the front blocks and the alignment of the drill is not the same. And it's such a small tweak. And I
I
have
feel
students who forget to put the blocks on the right setting. So I understand that sometimes. But like, it's just a small thing where it's like, if you're going to like take something off of the internet from other teachers, it's like, do your due diligence to do your best to understand it. And like I used to do stuff like that all the time. Like you have to learn. Like it's a maturity thing in some ways. But I think that yeah, you have to be careful with like seeing things on the internet and fully understanding them.
so. I have a question when it comes to teaching because we're on this
Mhm.
topic right now. So, what is your opinion about teachers teaching something post that they don't do or they can't do or won't do? How do you feel? I want to hear your opinion on that.
I think there's nuance to it because if there's another teacher, Amy Go, Miss Inkblot on Instagram, that I talked to about this at length because she made a post about it. And I kind of got not offended, but I was a little bit like, ooh, this kind of hurts because my wrist is really messed up still. And like, it's always, I have a dead bone in my wrist. So it's like, I do the best I can, but like, there's only so much I'm able to do and not like mess myself up worse. So because of that, I still teach handstand skills that one, I'm no longer able to do. Or two, sometimes, I mean, very rarely, but I will teach skills that like I've never been able to do. But it's also like, how different is a straddle press versus a pike press when I'm able to pike press on my forearms? So like, I understand the mechanics of the pike press. It's just not something I was able to do in handstand because of my specific limitations. But like, should I not be able to teach that because I was never able to do it and will never be able to do it? I'm not sure. I mean, I've been able to help students accomplish a lot of skills that I will never be able to do. But there's nuance to that because should someone who doesn't understand how to do a handstand be teaching handstands or like, no, maybe not. And is it wrong, say that that teacher is at the beginning of their handstand journey and they say something like, this is what I'm working on. I'm just trying to like kick up to the wall right now or something like that. Do I think that's wrong? No. Like, I mean, you're just sharing where you're at. Like, that's fine. But I think it's, there's layers to it. So that's the shortest version of the answer I can give you.
So what you're saying is it really is situational or like where you're at in your own journey. if you're honest with your journey, if like you said, like, hey, yeah, in the beginning, this is what I'm doing. So now you're just sharing, you're just basically extending what you already have to someone else. And you don't go like beyond that, that you haven't like experienced it or something like that.
Right. Because I have a follow-up question for you, which then I'll answer. So, because my follow-up question would be, how many people are there that are able to do skills but cannot explain to you how to do them?
That's actually an extremely good point, because that's what I actually tell people. Like there's a line between a practitioner to a teacher. You can do all kinds of shit, but can you translate that and extend that to someone else? Now that's a question. And that's what will define what a good teacher is. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you.
Okay, so I think the answer to both of our original thoughts is like, if you're able to understand the prerequisites to an exercise, and if you're able to understand the anatomical components of like what's going on in that exercise, then like, yeah, I think you can teach it. But if you don't understand what it takes to get there and what's going on in that exercise and be able to look at somebody's body and see what the difference between what their body is doing and what they need to do, which is different for everybody. So, I mean, it does take a long time to learn that skill as a teacher. Like people, like some people are more born with the eye to see, like I see shapes when I look at people. Like
Me
I
too.
see like shapes and lines and like proportions and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I have the same skill. I thought I was just weird.
We're good teachers, or, you know, that's why we're able to look at people and kind of assess and see what's going on. And like I said, some people, you can build that skill too,
Absolutely.
for sure. And not everyone is going to see things the same way. Like just because you don't see things like that doesn't mean you're not a good teacher. But it does take time. And also, like, there are ways to take people through a spiritual experience without having to be so aware of like the postures and the poses. If you're teaching simple postures, you don't need to like be an expert at like what's going on, because like it's like simple and like, you know what I mean? But when you're teaching things that are more complex, I think that like we owe it to our students to try to like understand and have some experience in them, so that we're not like leading them into like muddy water that we don't know what's going to happen. Because like I've injured myself many, many, many times from my yoga practice, from being stupid,
Yeah.
from whatever it
Ego.
is, from my
Ego.
hypermobility. Yeah, from sleeping, like, you know. So,
Absolutely. Oh, I have another question for
yeah.
you. So we're gonna dive here. I like that you opened this topic. My question is, what is your take to the line, if I can do it, you can do it? So what's your
It's not
opinion on that?
true. Well, sometimes true.
So do you
I mean,
think it's positive to say that to someone, or make
okay.
that your tagline, that if I can do it, you can do it? Okay. Explain, please.
I mean, I think there's more nuance to it. Now, is it inherently wrong for someone to say that? No. But if it's someone who's in a very privileged body that's never had an issue with anything, like, is that real, like, relatable? I'm not really sure. I don't think so. But, you know, sometimes I will say things to my students where it's like, you know, if I have I have a dead bone in my wrist, and like I can still do a handstand because of my determination and a little bit of stupidity. So if I can do it, you can probably do it.
Yeah.
You
Just up
know?
to you how you want to be stubborn. Like, what's your stubbornness level, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that there are certain things like a push up, or I don't know, you know, maybe basic things that you can say that to people, but I think it's a slippery slope, because if you look at people doing extreme things, whether it's flexibility or strength based, no. There has to be some, and for most people, I think there has to be like a predisposition toward being able to do certain skills. And it doesn't mean that you will get there with no work. But like certain things for me, like my shoulders, like I said, my joints are open. So like I can do hollow backs until the cows come home. Not that I should, but I can. And that's always been like an easy, kind of comfy place for me to hang out. Like when I used to do acro back in the day, I couldn't do a straight line handstand in acro. I would be in this position and I'd be like comfy hanging out and they'd be like, what's going on? And I'm like, this is where my body wants to go. So if I can do it, can you do it? No, but like, can you do it in some way in your own capacity? Like, yes, probably, if you're willing to put in the work.
You were talking about acro. I remember when I first went to acro, it was actually my first date with this guy. And then I was a flyer. I'm small. And for the love of God, my hips just do not want to do what I want to do. I look like a broken accordion. I was like, what? And what is happening? It just would not stay still. So yeah, I get it completely. So you're saying is that it's more subjective. But if I can do it, you can do it. Do you think that the receiver of that line should be more conscious as to where they take that advice from? You know, like for example, from like a body difference. If someone who is in a regular size never had any understanding of a bigger body and then says, if I can do it, you can do it, right? That's kind of hard to take in, right? So like from the receiving end of that scenario, do you think that person that's receiving that line, if I can do it, you can do it, should be more cautious and to where they're getting that information from?
And like in that moment, that is on the responsibility of like the teacher. Like the teacher probably shouldn't have said that to that student. But as the receiver of that, you know, you can choose how you want to let things roll off or not. And like, I think that everyone gets motivated by different things because you know how you said like the stubbornness, right? So like, if that ignites the stubbornness in someone to like reach a goal that they never thought that they'd be able to accomplish, great. But like, is that going to happen for everyone? No. But I also think that's why it's important to choose your teachers because I've been in a lot of classes where like the teacher will say something that's like kind of offensive, but like people vibe. You know what I mean? Like they're vibing and it's fine. And I say things that are offensive all the time. I curse all the time. I'm like, I smoke all the time, like whatever. So I'm I can be offensive for sure. So I think that, you know, as students, we just have to choose the teachers that we resonate with and like the teachers that we feel like are, I mean, I saw some posts the other day that said like safe spaces don't actually exist. Like there's no truly safe space for like any of us because like anytime you're vulnerable to anyone, there's like always like, I don't know. It's just like even with your partner, like is there any space that's truly safe? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that question right now, but it just made me think of like with, you know, these like classes and like the way that we like talk to people and stuff. Like I used to really limit what I did around my students or what I said around my students because I didn't want to offend anybody. Because like one time I called like belly down shavasana beach whale pose. And a fellow teacher, not even like a student, but a fellow teacher just said that like, hey, that might be offensive. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. That like could be offensive. And like nobody was offended by it. Like no one said anything, but like the teacher just like kind of made me think. But it takes you down a spiral because it's like, then what can we say? And obviously I'm not trying to say anything that's going to overtly offend anyone, but like also I am sarcastic. My sense of humor can be dry. Like you know, there are certain things that I'm not going to limit about my personality, but also if anyone ever approaches me and says something, like I will be the first person to cry to them and explain myself and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. But that doesn't really happen. Like I'm not actually offensive like that. So I don't really have that experience these days.
So I these days, like I'm the same. Like I cuss a lot. Like I think in the beginning of my classes, I used to say a lot like, okay, just so you know, I'm not for minors. There's no filter in this. So if you're one of those people that don't like the cussing, this is not going to be class for you. And I'm not going to be offended if you start walking away. I actually honor that. Like, you know what's good for you, what resonates with you. And if I know it's not going to be this class, then I respect that. And I think it's important to find that what you said, like finding the teacher that resonate with you, because a lot of people get lost in the noise of the yoga industry. And have you seen the documentary Kumare?
Yes, of course. We used to show
right?
it in our teacher training to our students.
Yeah, right. Like I take that seriously when he said, and I pass it on to my students when he said, like, find wisdom in the practice and not in the industry because it's just so muddy. There's just too much noise. If you really
Because
understand,
people, none of us are perfect. We're just people.
no, yeah, absolutely. And I tell people, like, it's nice to have, that theoretically, like, the romanticization of like having like an actual guru there. But
Right.
if you really take a step back and look at your life and look at yourself, your guru is your life experiences, right? Like there's a lot of learning there. Only if you are willing to look at yourself in the mirror and actually face the things that you may not like about yourself, but actually see that and then learn from it. Then that's the guru that you need. So obviously different for everybody, right? So like I like these topics. I
I
could go on
agree.
for days.
There's one thing I want to rewind to because I think it is important. So we're talking about like the student's perspective of this, right? Where like if the student is like offended by something the teacher says, but like I think on the flip side, it's important to talk about like the teacher perspective because I am a people pleaser by nature and like often will like I'm sometimes too nice. Like that is kind of something that my friends say about me. And like it's not a good thing to be too nice
No.
because like you don't speak your mind. Like you want to speak your mind like that in a nice way. But like, you know what I mean? It's important to be able to advocate for yourself. And so I used to get really offended by feedback by if students didn't like my class or like me or whatever it might have been. But it's that there are so many people, like no one's going to like everyone. And I don't need to have every student. And why would I waste time trying to convince students that don't like me when there are students that love me? And I can put my energy into them and other people that are like more curious than like this person that's like a lost cause and not a lost cause. They might love like someone else's teaching, but like they're just not going to be my student. And like I realized that I needed to let go of like trying to have everyone like me and everyone be my student because you're never, first of all, you can't really be yourself and you're never going to get everybody. It just doesn't work.
I would say if everybody likes you, you're not doing something right. You're doing something wrong because you can't please everybody. And I totally relate with that because like I dialed down myself so much because first of all, my experience with studio setting teaching like a group class was the studio that I actually bought. I was like, I think visibly shaking. I was like terrified because I taught a lot of like private classes before then and I wasn't a studio person and then my dumb ass like okay let's buy a studio so that was like my approach so to me I totally get that because like I was so stuck in like trying to copy what other people were doing. I lost track of myself. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So that's when I was like, you know what, forget everything you fucking know, we're doing this my that's like kind of like the pivotal thing for me. And I felt more like me. Because to be like you said about being too nice, I used to be the same way. I'm like the person that will always get the Miss Friendship award. I was like, why? I'm not like, I don't like people. So why are you making me Miss Friendship? So, so I tell this to my partner a lot. There's difference between being nice and being kind. You can be kind and have boundaries. You can be kind and stay grounded and true to yourself. Because once you start just wanting to be nice to everyone, the question there that needs to be asked is, what does that say about you? And I think it's a valuable question that I ask myself all the time. Every time I get triggered, I'm like, all right, what's it say about me? Ego. All right, let's park this shit. Tone it down. So you know what? Those are my personal conversation with myself. But yeah, the being too nice. I think a lot of yoga teachers struggle with that, trying to please everybody.
And I think that I am back to what I was originally saying when I was kind of like, talking shit about some of the teachers in the industry. Like, if people could just be a little more real about what they struggle with or like what's
Absolutely.
going on or like whatever it might be, And like, I think that now some people have used their struggles in a way to like gain leverage. But I just remember a time where I had experiences with certain teachers that were very, like I said, traditional in an ashram, all these things, like, but then like couldn't recognize like why they were still having like repeats of certain patterns that like happened before that life. And it's like you just got to own it, right? Like for me, when I used to teach yoga, I like wouldn't smoke around my students and stuff. And like now when people come to my retreats, like I think they're at my home, I'm like hitting the bong. Like I can't like hide what I'm doing. Or I mean, I could, but I don't care enough anymore because it's like, if that like offends people, like I'm not gonna like do it in their face and like whatever. But like if you're offended by a part of my lifestyle right now, which might not be a part of my lifestyle forever, but it's just part of my lifestyle in this moment, then like I might not be the person for you. I also don't drink like at all. Like, I mean, I'll occasionally have a drink. I'm not like sober from drinking, but you know, I think that we all have things like vices or whatever you want to call it. So it's like you kind of have to like own it because otherwise then you're just like hiding in a corner smoking or doing whatever it is that your vice is. And then like everyone just thinks that, you know, no one knows, you know, and then
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
you're hiding it. And it just doesn't feel as genuine. So I think that like being in a place now where I'm just more open with like my even things I'm not super proud of. Like I'm not super proud that I smoke so much because my anxiety has been so bad for the past year because I mean we haven't even it's a rabbit hole. We should probably talk about some of this stuff, but you know, I bought a home to renovate into a retreat center and everything went wrong. And so I spent pretty much all my money, like had to just throw all my money at it when that's not what I was supposed to do and got like a half-assed result out of it because I hired someone who said they could do all these things and then they fucked me over extremely badly. And this person happens to be in my family. So that makes it extra complicated. And so I've been losing my mind for the past year trying to like swim to the surface. And yeah, so anyways, I've been struggling. And I think it's important to like be real because otherwise people just don't realize what's going on. Also, I mean, listen, I'm not at the top of the industry. I don't make that much money. Like I've had years where I've made a decent amount of money, but I've never made as much money as some of these people that are making like $1 million a year or like close to it. Like I am nowhere close to that. So, and I don't know if I ever will be because I'm not great at scaling my business. But, you know, I just think that it's sometimes we look at these people and like Dylan Werner and like some of these top tier people, Kino, they're making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's easy for us, I'll include myself in that because I am not on their level, to look at people like that and be like, I can do that, similar to what you said earlier, right? If they can do it, I can do it. And that's not true because even for me, like I come from a ton of privilege, like just like the family I was born into. And I've worked super hard to get where I am now. And it is still really hard. And I still have to constantly adapt to what's going on in the industry. All of us do, right? But it's like the pandemic was one way and then the pendulum swung. Now in-person classes are popular again. Like don't really have money to travel on retreats right now. Like things are changing. Things are different. So
And it's
it's been
fast.
hard.
It's fast. And the change is so fast that it's very interesting to watch. Just like the last 5 years, right? It is such a whole different world, and coping with that is it's become a challenge. And I get where you're at, and I understand what you're saying. Like with the teachers just being honest with what they're going through, and just be okay, and not put us in a place where like, oh, she should be like this or she should be like that. Why is she doing that? And if the people are doing like creating that, have that feedback to you, then that's not your person, and that's fucking fine. Because there's like billions of people. You're gonna find the people that will resonate with you and will see you as a human being who has this universal fucking range of emotions, and you're going through exactly the same shit as what this other person that's talking shit about that person. Like it's the same thing. The
Right.
details are different, but all the emotions, the experiences are the same.
Right. And you know, for me, my students come to my house now for my retreats. So it's like I want people that I like to come. You know what I mean? Like I won't host anyone because I pretty much only host people I have at least some experience with, either as a student or like messaging, because I don't want a complete stranger in my home. But like
Absolutely.
if someone annoys me a little bit, like I'm not gonna not let them come. I annoy myself a little bit. Like everyone annoys me a little bit. So like that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying, like, how much of a more fulfilling experience is it when you're surrounded by people that like love you and that you love, even if it's just like part of that universal love that you're talking about. It doesn't have to be that I like know this person super well and I like love them, but like I still have love for them because like we're in this like experience together and like they've chosen to be here with me. You know what I mean? So I think it's really
Absolutely.
special.
And I think you don't really need to like have this different version of love. If you can just create like, acceptance, right? Just have that acceptance. That's a different person. I'm a different person. That's where she's at right now. That's something I wouldn't do, but it doesn't mean we can't coexist or I can't learn from this person or this person doesn't have any value at all. And that's why they still come, right? Like you said, like, you annoy yourself, like, fuck, if I could take a break from myself just for one day, I'd take it.
I think most of us would in some ways.
So you talked about teachers and what is the experience for you from like the evolution of teaching? You kind of like touched it a little bit from the in-person and the digital platform. What lessons and the worst experience, the best experience for you from that transition? Because I know you had also a lot of changes in your life, your wrist injury, the closing the studio, right? And fucking pandemic, everybody got affected by that. And now your current challenges with your space. So can you give a little bit more of insight in all those changes for you?
Totally. So I think sometimes the universe pushes you and like, I mean, I think always the universe pushes you and like you get to choose if you're going to like go with the push or if you're going to like push back and try not to. And I feel like that's been the course of my life at many points. And so even with the donation based studio, I think it was a beautiful idea. And I am really glad that I did it. And I'm proud of the fact that my friend and I did that. And it was not successful because of where it was specifically. Like it was not in a big enough city to make a donation based studio work. Like there were a lot of things. People that have money don't want to give more money. There's a lot of factors. So, anyways, it just was not successful. And the pandemic was like the nail in the coffin, so to speak. So it was just bad. So then I transitioned to fully teaching online. And all of a sudden it was like a huge exponential increase in like everything, students, money, all of it. It was great. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can teach anywhere I have Wi-Fi and this is like so easy. I also transitioned into teaching series of classes, which was a huge game changer for me rather than having like a weekly class that runs in perpetuity that you can never vacation from because people then forget that you exist. So I would do like chunks where it's like, 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. And then it's like, if I need to take a week off in between or something, like I can sneak it in there, but people don't really need to notice. And so like there were a lot of things that were really beneficial about those couple of years. And then, things changed again. And then people started going back in person and they wanted to travel. They wanted to go on retreats. They wanted to do all these things. And I'd always wanted to to have a home that I could host people in because I don't really like people either. I don't really want to travel. Like I've traveled a lot in my life and also like not for nothing, but like, the emissions, all this stuff. Like I don't need to be bouncing around the world to travel. Like I mean, I know that I have to bring people to me, so like it's like a bunch of flights to come to me. So I guess that's a really bad way to look at it, but whatever. Either way, traveling is exhausting. And so I want to bring people to me. And so that's why I moved in this direction. But it's just kind of funny, like I said before, about how, people really wanted retreats right after COVID, right? They were like, everyone was thirsty to travel. They would go anywhere. And also they were thirsty for human interaction.
Absolutely.
And now I
Absolutely.
think that things are just like normalized again. And also like the economy is just everything sucks. Like every person that I've talked to is like in not a great financial place for the most
No,
part. And it sucks.
it
I feel for
sucks.
us as a collective. It's
Yeah.
really shitty because I'm out here trying to get people to spend like $3,000 on a retreat. And I get it because most people don't have that money laying around or like able to pay it in a few payments or whatever. So it's just like, it's hard.
It's challenging. It's very challenging. And current situation right now with economically, and being in a wellness industry, it's just in the back of the head of people. Because right now, the questioning of the self now is like, okay, this minimum wage that never goes higher for the last 10 years, I could either use that to put food on the table or I'm gonna go on a retreat. So that's like how big it is now. And that sucks because, that's another topic. So,
I
yeah,
know.
I get it. I get it a lot. So before we end this, I want to ask you, from the teacher's perspective, what would be the advice you'd give to a practitioner? And from a teacher's perspective, what advice would you give to new teachers who are just starting in this path, even those that already been in this industry? And let's start with that. What would be your advice to both your fellow teachers and practitioners?
I think practitioners, it's a little easier. Maybe we start there, which is find your joy and find your routine as well, because it's not always going to bring you joy in the moment to do the things that you need to do. So I think that finding teachers you like we said, all of those things make it easier. And in the course and knowing that most answers do come from your own experience, your own practice, and from within. And of course, you can ask other people their opinions on things, but most teachers don't know as much as you think, unfortunately, just because we're all human.
Absolutely.
And also because a lot of teachers are newer. I mean, there's levels to it. And then with the teacher thing, it's like I think that you have to find your passion within teaching, which is not going to be the same for everyone. Like, are you more passionate about meditation or chakras, or there might be something specific that like brings you more joy, and also like that you are passionate about learning more about, so that you do become a master of whatever it is that you're teaching. And that takes a long time. So you have to start now. And it also might shift, because even for me right now, I've been having a lot of thoughts how my goal used to be to scale my business, right? Make more money, get more students, all these things. And my goal in some ways is to still do that. But I've realized I think I want to spend more effort on other business ventures and invest in things that make more sense, rather than something that's like, because I mean, right now it's like there's only so much work I can do every day to make more money or to teach more, right? And also, even teaching, it's effortful. Do I always want to do this? Like, what if I want to have a baby? Like, I haven't even been able to consider having a baby, because I'm like, and also, like, I mean, I don't want to have the pressure to like do stuff immediately after, because if I don't, then like, what's going on? And people are going to judge me either way. So, anywho, I just think that it's never, pivot when necessary, and don't be like, let the signs from the universe or however you see it, like, don't ignore the signs. Because if you feel like you're moving in a direction that you feel very aligned with, like, that is something that you should take into consideration. And if you don't feel super aligned and feel a little lost, that's also normal. We all experience that. Sometimes the answer is to stay the course, and sometimes the answer is to veer and find a new course. So only you know the answer to that. And honestly, it's usually the opposite of what you naturally gravitate toward. So if you're the kind of person that naturally wants to switch course, then you probably need to stay course. And if you're the kind of person that like doesn't ever try something new, then like you might need to try something new.
That's actually perfect. That's a great advice. Now, one last thing before we really end this, and I ask you about the offerings you have for audience from the human side perspective, and like the living, that part, like what advice you would give to practitioner, non-practitioner, teacher, or just kind of like dabbling into it, like what would be the wisdom that you have learned through this journey that you can pass on to anyone that's like,
I think it's that you could even ask, what advice would I say to myself, or what would I say to myself, right? And it's
there you
like,
go.
be 10 times more patient than you think you need to be. And I think that that's for me specifically, because I struggle with being impatient. And I think that the more you can slow down and be patient and be in the moment, um, you realize that, like, of course, there are moments in your life where like shit is wrong, right? Where like things are going wrong. But most moments are not like that. And even if you're thinking about those moments where things have gone wrong, like in the present moment, things are like usually somewhat okay. And I know that that varies person to person. I'm not trying to like sugarcoat anyone going through major trauma or bullshit in life. But I think if you can be aware of like not being stuck in the anxieties of past, present, or future and just trying to be more in the moment. And back to the movement practice side of things, it's like find something you enjoy or at least that you tolerate and then do it a lot. Like find a way that it fits in your routine and commit yourself to it. Because that's the only way that you're really going to experience growth is by like committing to one thing and like doing it for a while. And then after even 6 months of doing that one thing, I think you can decide if you want to change course or like do something a little different when it comes to exercise specifically. Generally speaking, it's like find that thing that you tolerate and then keep going because you just have to start. And then once you're in the process, when you start, the progress comes fast. So once you reach that point where you've plateaued or where the progress stalls out, you have to find other things that will keep you going. And I think the last thing I'll say is not just the patience to allow yourself more grace that like none of us are perfect. And like each moment we get the choice to like what we're going to do next and just trying to do the best you can with those choices, like each moment that you have the choice. And that's all we can do because like life is hard and that's it.
That's funny because you said that because I kept telling my partner, like, when life gives you shit, you don't just make lemonade. Sometimes shit is just shit. Because if you turn that into lemonade, you're going to have shit lemonade and no one's going to drink that shit. No one's going to drink that. Would you drink a shit lemonade? So you
Yeah.
just kind of like let it go and maybe pivot, do something else. All right. It's so nice talking to you. And I love this conversation. We could go for like 3 hours, I think, of doing this. I want to give you a little bit of time to tell people about your offerings because I can attest for myself that Irene is just a phenomenal coach. She's a phenomenal trainer. And I know people get intimidated by the level of skills that she has, but she's not doing that to flex. She's not going to make you like over and turn into a pretzel. She's going to work your like do a direction or a pay that works for you. So Irene, tell everyone what you got going on.
Totally. So the easiest way to practice with me is I have a monthly membership. And as of right now, I have a free 7-day trial. So if you join, you get 7 days for free. And then it's $50 a month after that. And maybe we can come out with a discount code for your people as well to give a little
Nice.
something. And so, yeah, that's the best way. And my membership includes over 500 on-demand classes, live classes every week. And every month I put out a new on-demand program that you can follow. So if you like don't know where to start or what to do, it's a really great way to just build that strength and awareness. And also I have options for like intro to contortion and intro to handstands for those of you that maybe haven't done stuff like that. But most of my classes are what we would say like are all levels, but they're not like beginner like friendly. So I have beginner friendly classes, but most of my classes are more all levels, we could say. So, and then I do have retreats. And if you are more interested in training in person, getting hands-on adjustments and all of those things, come hang out with me in Michigan. We have a lot of fun. We go in the sauna and train really hard. And my style, as you've probably figured out, is a blend of strength, flexibility, and curse words. And so,
And dry humor.
yeah, who knows what else. But yeah, I'd love to have you join. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, Fit Queen Irene, and I'm available via DM or email if you ever have questions or want to know more.
That's awesome. And I will put Irene's website if you want to contact her directly through her website. I'll put that in the description and everything else that you need to know about her and her handles and everything. Irene, thank you so much for giving me this time and all our technical issues. So good.
Oh, no
It's
worries.
such
Thank
a
you, Joel.
great conversation. I really appreciate it so much. And thank you for being here on the Modern Yoga Talks.
Pleasure.
All right. That's a wrap for this episode. And thanks again for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure you show your appreciation. Follow us here, rate us, leave a review. It really helps the show grow. And if you want to keep the conversation going, you can connect with Modern Yoga Talks on Instagram and YouTube. And again, big thanks to a wonderful guest for being on the show. Check the description for offerings and ways to connect with our beautiful guests. Thanks again.